My name's Eli Parker, and I wasn't supposed to end up in a place like this. I used to fix HVAC systems for a living. Steady work, decent pay, the kind that lets you buy cheap beer and pretend you're comfortable. That was before the divorce, before the house got sold out from under me, before I started driving south just to see where the highway ran out. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I just wanted quiet, someplace where no one expected me to smile. The Seaside Motor Inn was the first building that didn't look condemned when I pulled off Highway 98 outside of Port Fenley. 11 rooms, paint peeling like sunburn, and a neon sign that buzzed loud enough to drown out thought. I told the manager, Mr. Dunley, I was looking for work, anything. He handed me a mop and said, "You got eyes that don't sleep much. You'll fit in fine on nights." That was a week ago. I'd been covering the graveyard shift ever since, the hours between midnight and dawn when the motel goes still enough to hear the pipes breathing in the walls. It wasn't hard work, just solitude in a thin wrapper. I didn't mind. I've never been afraid of being alone. What scared me was the feeling that someone else might be in the room and I just hadn't noticed yet. Dunley gave me a list of instructions scrawled in blue ink. When to check the boiler, where to leave the keys, how to log the guests. At the bottom he'd written, "You'll learn the rules soon enough." I thought he meant it as a joke. That night, the first one I worked alone, was hot for October. The air hung heavy with the smell of salt and asphalt, and the bugs drummed against the glass like they were trying to get in. I sat behind the counter, sipping coffee that tasted like pennies, and listened to the neon sign outside buzz like a dying cicada. Seaside Motor Inn vacancy. The sea flickered on and off, blinking like it couldn't make up its mind whether to exist. The lobby was small, the kind of place designed for 5-minute check-ins and nothing more. Old paneling, beige carpet, a counter worn smooth by 1,000 elbows. The vending machine by the hallway hummed softly, half lit and full of snacks no one ever bought. The only sound came from the oscillating fan by the front desk that creaked every time it turned. I checked the guest ledger. 3 rooms occupied. Room 2, Mason, some contractor who left before sunrise each day. Room 5, a retired couple waiting on insurance after the last hurricane. Room 8, a woman who paid in cash and never gave her name. The key for room 9 hung by itself, red tag faded but still readable. Do not issue. I didn't think much of it. Every motel has one room that doesn't rent. Bad wiring, leaky pipes, a busted window. Around 11:45, I made another pot of coffee and stood by the window, watching fog drift over the parking lot. The Gulf wasn't far. You could smell it in the air, that mix of salt, rot, and diesel. The night felt slow and harmless. Then the bell over the door jingled. A man stepped in, tall and clean in a gray suit that didn't belong in a roadside motel. He looked like he'd stepped straight out of a funeral, quiet, polite, too smooth around the edges. He set a leather bag on the counter and smiled at me with pale eyes that didn't blink often enough. "Evening," he said. "You've got a room, I hope." "Plenty," I said, reaching for the ledger. "How long you staying?" "Just tonight." He slid a credit card across the counter, the name worn down to silver scratches. When I hesitated, he smiled again. All teeth. "Cash better?" he asked, producing 3 fresh 20s. "That works," I said, taking the money. I reached for the rack of keys and stopped. The first one that caught my eye was 9. The red tag glowed faintly under the fluorescent light. "Sorry," I said. "That room's under maintenance. Let me grab another." He didn't look surprised. "Maintenance finished this morning," he said calmly, as if he knew something I didn't. "Who told you that?" He tapped the counter lightly. "It's the only one with the window view, isn't it?" I stared at him. Only the manager and the cleaning staff would know that. There was no way a random traveler would. "You been here before?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly. "Not exactly." That answer should have made me tell him to leave. Instead, I slid the key toward him without thinking. His fingers brushed mine, dry, smooth, cold, and I swear I felt something pulse through the metal ring. "Enjoy your stay," I said, my voice a little tighter than before. He nodded, turned toward the hallway, and disappeared down it. His footsteps didn't make a sound on the carpet. As he walked past each ceiling light, they flickered once, like the air thinned around him. I went to the window to watch him cross the lot, but the glass showed only his car idling near the curb. No shadow, no reflection, just the soft hum of the neon light outside. I told myself it was a trick of the angle, the glare. Back at the desk, I checked the ledger. His name was written in looping cursive. S. Harrow. I underlined it out of habit, then sat back and waited for the night to move again. It was close to 1 when the phone rang. No caller ID, no sound except the dull electronic ring. I hesitated, hand hovering over the receiver. That's when I saw the sticky note taped to the monitor, something Dunley had scribbled the day he hired me. "If the phone rings around 1, don't answer. Just don't." I pulled my hand back and watched the clock tick from 12:59 to 1 o'clock. The phone stopped ringing on its own. The air in the lobby felt different after that, thicker somehow. I could hear the vending machine humming behind me, the faint hiss of the ocean miles away. When the knock came, it sounded too soft to be real. 3 slow taps from down the hall. I stepped out of the office and called, "Everything okay?" No reply. Room 9's door stood closed at the far end, the light above it flickering faintly. Beneath the door, a thin glow, orange, like candlelight. I walked toward it, every instinct telling me to turn around. "Mr. Harrow," I called. No response, just a pause. And then a woman's voice, quiet and strained, came through the door. "Please," she whispered. "He locked me in." I froze. "Who locked you in?" Silence, just breathing. I grabbed the spare key from the hook at the desk and returned to the hallway. The doorknob was warm, almost vibrating under my hand. "Ma'am?" The breathing stopped. Behind me, I heard faint footsteps, soft, careful. I turned, but the hallway was empty. Only the buzzing of the overhead light filled the air. When I looked back, the glow under the door was gone. I tried the key. It didn't turn. The metal seemed to resist me, bending slightly as if it were alive. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice spoke, not hers, but his, calm, confident. "Wrong shift, Eli." My heart slammed against my ribs. I hadn't told him my name. The light above me buzzed, dimmed, and went out for half a second, plunging the hall into gray emergency glow. When it came back, the air smelled faintly of ozone and something else, like burned hair. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. When I finally made it back to the lobby, I opened the ledger again. The name S. Harrow was gone. The page was blank, clean, as though no one had ever signed it. I sat at the desk until dawn, the key to room 9 still clenched in my palm. The motel stayed silent, except for the slow heartbeat of the neon sign outside. When sunlight finally came through the blinds, I forced myself to check the room. The door was unlocked now. Inside, everything looked untouched. The bed was made. The air smelled like old dust. No luggage, no footprints, no sign anyone had ever stayed there. But on the nightstand sat a glass ashtray filled with salt water. Floating in the middle was a motel key tag, number 9, its metal ring rusted through. I didn't sleep after that first night. I told myself I just had too much coffee, that the voices behind the door were my imagination, that maybe I'd nodded off and dreamed half of it. But the key tag in the ashtray stayed in my pocket all day, heavy as a secret. When I came back for my second shift, the sky was the color of nickel and the air felt like it had been boiled. The salt in it stuck to my skin, the way Florida nights always do. The Seaside Motor Inn looked smaller in daylight. Paint cracked, grass browned out from neglect, the sign buzzing like an insect that couldn't die. Dunley was in the office, counting cash from the drawer with a cigarette tucked behind his ear. He glanced up when I came in, squinting through the haze. "You see anybody from corporate?" he asked. "No." He nodded, satisfied, like that was good news. "Good. I don't like visitors. You lock up at dawn last night?" "Yeah." I hesitated. "You ever have trouble with, room 9? That made him look up. The cigarette slipped a little from behind his ear. "Why?" I told him about the man in the gray suit, about the key tag. I didn't mention the voice that had said my name, just that someone had checked in and then disappeared. He stared at me for a long time, face unreadable. Then he stood, walked to the key rack, and ran his finger down the tags until it reached 9. The hook was empty. "I told you," he said finally. "Don't issue that room." I didn't. "Then how'd the key end up missing?" "I don't know," I said. "When I got here this morning, it was on the nightstand, rusted through." He exhaled through his nose and rubbed his temple. "Rust doesn't happen overnight, Parker." I wanted to argue, but the look he gave me shut that down. He grabbed a notepad from the counter, flipped a few pages, and tore out a single sheet. "These are the rules," he said, sliding it toward me. "You follow them exactly. Don't ask questions, don't improvise, and don't tell the guests." The paper was old, the edges yellowed, 10 lines written in cramped handwriting, each rule darker than the one before. I read them twice before asking, "This a joke?" His face didn't move. "You'll wish it was." Then he picked up his cigarette and left. After he drove off, I stood behind the counter for a long time, the list trembling slightly in my hands. The words on it didn't read like guidelines. They read like warnings. I copied them into the ledger, just in case the original disappeared. Never rent room 9, even if it shows as available. If a guest checks in but doesn't cast a shadow under the lobby light, refund them and close for the night. Between 1 o'clock and 1:07 a.m., the phone will ring with no caller ID. Do not answer. The vending machine in the hall takes only quarters from the motel drawer. Never use your own change. If you hear footsteps on the roof, ignore them. When the lobby TV turns on by itself, let it play. It's showing what already happened. The cleaning cart must stay locked in the supply closet after dark. Never knock on room 9, even if you hear someone crying, especially then. At 3:33 a.m., check the guest log. Cross out any name that wasn't there before your shift started. Always leave the front door unlocked before dawn. Whoever leaves doesn't like locked doors. I folded the paper and tucked it into my shirt pocket. The idea of whoever leaves lingered in my head longer than I wanted it to. The first few hours passed without anything strange. A couple checked in around 10, travelers heading north toward Pensacola. They smelled like sunscreen and exhaustion. I gave them room 4, took their payment, and tried not to look like I was waiting for something to happen. Around midnight, the place went quiet. The couple's car was parked under the single streetlight, and all the other windows were dark. The vending machine hummed down the hall. Everything felt normal, but normal had started to feel like camouflage, like the world was pretending to behave. Then the phone rang again. The display was blank, just like before. I looked at the clock. 1:02 a.m. My hand hovered above the receiver. My brain screamed, "Don't answer it," but my body didn't listen. Curiosity is a kind of gravity. I picked it up. At first, nothing, just a faint static, like ocean wind. Then a voice whispered, "You weren't supposed to let him in." The connection cut. I stood there, phone still in my hand, pulse hammering in my throat. The line went dead, but I could still hear breathing, except it wasn't through the phone. It was behind me. I turned, but no one was there. The lobby TV clicked on by itself, screen glowing blue. I nearly dropped the receiver. Static filled the room for a few seconds before the image sharpened. Grainy security footage of the motel lobby. My lobby. The same angle, same desk. But it wasn't live. I was standing behind the counter on screen, except I was talking to someone just out of frame. I leaned forward, nodded, then smiled. The figure stepped into view. It was the man in the gray suit. I froze. In the footage, he placed his hand on the counter, on the same spot where my hand rested now. The screen flickered when it cleared the front desk was empty. Both of us were gone. The TV turned off. For a long time, the only sound was the vending machine buzzing down the hall. The hum of the sign outside seemed louder than ever. I stood there, staring at the dark screen, trying to catch my breath. Then came the sound of wheels, slow, steady, like something rolling across tile. The cleaning cart. It was supposed to be locked in the supply closet, but the sound was unmistakable. The soft rattle of bottles, the squeak of a loose wheel. I stepped out of the office and peered down the hallway. The cart stood at the far end, beside room 9. A single bottle of cleaner dripped onto the carpet, leaving a dark trail. The door to room 9 was open just an inch. I whispered to no one, "You've got to be kidding me." Something moved behind the door, just a shadow, brief, like someone pacing. Then the cart began to roll backward on its own, one slow inch at a time, the loose wheel turning in small jerks. I took one step forward, then stopped. The rule, never knock on room 9, even if you hear someone crying. No one was crying, not yet. I backed away and locked myself in the office until sunrise. When morning came, the hallway was empty again. The cleaning cart was gone. But the wet trail it had left behind was still there, leading straight under the door of room 9 and seeping out the other side in a thin, dark line. By the third night, I'd stopped pretending the Seaside Motor Inn was just another crumbling roadside job. There was something living in the silence there, something that knew when I was trying not to notice it. I told myself I'd keep the rules. every one of them. But the truth is, people like me never follow rules for long. We think the world runs on logic until it starts whispering back. The evening started calm. The air smelled of rain that never came, thick and metallic, and the power lines hummed in the wind like guitar strings. I kept my chair angled toward the front window, where the parking lot lights cast orange halos on the asphalt. There were only 2 guests checked in, rooms 3 and 7, and both had turned in early. Around midnight, the hum from the sign faded out. I didn't notice at first, not until the silence got too deep, like someone had stuffed cotton in my ears. The vending machine clicked once in the hallway, then twice. I turned. The display lights were flashing irregularly, jumping between numbers. A faint clink of coins echoed inside, like someone was feeding it change. I thought of rule #4. The vending machine in the hall takes only quarters from the motel drawer. Never use your own change. I hadn't touched it since Dunley gave me the list, but someone was using it now. I grabbed the flashlight from under the desk and stepped into the hall. The air felt off, cooler, heavier. My footsteps sank into the carpet without a sound. The vending machine's lights pulsed faintly, red and green like a dying heartbeat. Its reflection in the hallway window looked distorted, slightly taller, leaning forward. "Who's there?" I called. The machine answered with a mechanical whir. The metal flap opened, and something slid down into the tray. I stepped closer and shined the light inside. It wasn't a snack. It was a piece of folded paper. When I pulled it out, I saw it wasn't paper at all, but an old motel receipt, yellowed, creased, with faded print. Date: October 12th, 1984. Room number 9. Guest name: Eli Parker. My name. I laughed, but it came out thin and hollow. There had to be some mistake. A joke, maybe something Dunley planted to scare new hires. But the paper felt brittle, old in a way that couldn't be faked. The machine made another sound. Coins clattered inside it, though no one was feeding them in. The number display blinked. 9.9.9.9. I stepped back. The air smelled faintly of ozone again, like burned dust and salt water. Then the compressor kicked on, and every glass panel in the hallway vibrated. I turned to run, but the hallway had stretched longer than before. Too long. The distance back to the lobby looked doubled, maybe more. The lights overhead flickered in sequence, leading toward room 9. "No," I whispered. The door at the end of the hall was slightly open again. I could see the same orange glow inside. The carpet beneath my shoes felt damp, like the air was sweating. The vending machine clanked one last time and went still. I didn't move until the first hint of dawn light filtered through the lobby blinds. Only then did the hallway seem normal again. When the sun rose, I checked the vending machine's tray once more. The receipt was gone. In its place sat 4 quarters, each blackened as if burned. I put them in an envelope and left them in the drawer marked for Dunley. But when I came back that night, the envelope was gone. In its place was a note, written in a shaky hand on motel stationery. "Don't feed it again. It remembers your name now." I tried to find Dunley the next morning. His apartment above the office was empty. His truck was gone, but his shoes were still by the door. The bed looked untouched. That was the first day I realized there was no one left but me. By the 4th night, I'd stopped bringing a thermos of coffee. It didn't help anymore. The caffeine just made my thoughts run faster in circles, like an animal pacing the edge of a trap. The motel was quieter than usual. No cars in the lot, no new bookings, just the endless buzz of that dying neon sign and the faint hiss of wind through the palms. I tried to stay busy, wiped the counter, restocked towels, pretended the vending machine wasn't humming a low tune to itself again. I kept telling myself there was nothing to be afraid of, that all of it could be explained by bad wiring, exhaustion, or mold fumes. Logic's a stubborn thing. It fights to survive, even when you're standing in the middle of something that doesn't want to be understood. It was close to 1 a.m. when the TV in the lobby turned on by itself. The screen glowed blue, casting the whole room in that strange underwater light. I froze halfway through counting the cash drawer. The rule came to mind immediately. When the lobby TV turns on by itself, let it play. It's showing what already happened. So I stood there, watching, listening. Static gave way to a fuzzy image of the lobby, the same camera angle as before. I could see myself sitting behind the counter, pen in hand, writing in the guest ledger. But the timestamp in the corner was wrong. 3 nights earlier, the first night I'd met the man in the gray suit. On the screen, he was standing where I'd seen him before, by the counter, speaking to me. But this time, the sound came through, faint, tinny, like an old cassette recording. "You won't remember checking me in," the voice said, "but I'll remember you." I watched myself nod on the screen, smiling, like I agreed. The man leaned closer to the counter, and for the first time, I saw his reflection in the glass behind him. It wasn't human. The shape was there, yes, the outline of shoulders and a head, but inside it, there was only movement, like the surface of the ocean seen from underwater. I turned away. I didn't want to see what came next. The sound on the TV grew distorted, voices overlapping, static surging. The picture flickered, showing the hallway, room 9's door open, something standing just inside. Then the feed cut. The TV clicked off, but its screen stayed faintly lit, showing a reflection that didn't match mine. It was me at the counter, but older. Maybe 10 years, maybe more. Same clothes, same tired look, but my eyes were different. Darker, like I'd stopped blinking. I looked behind me to make sure I was still alone. The reflection on the screen smiled before I did. The power flickered. The lights in the hallway went dark one by one, a slow procession that stopped right outside the lobby door. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps above me, slow, deliberate, pacing across the roof. Rule #5. If you hear footsteps on the roof, ignore them. I tried. God knows I tried. But they grew louder, shifting direction until they were directly overhead. The ceiling creaked. Dust fell from the vents. I counted the steps, 8 in a row, then silence. I held my breath. A soft scraping sound started near the vent, like fingers dragging across metal. Then a whisper, low, garbled, but I could make out my name. Eli. I stumbled backward and grabbed the flashlight, shining it up at the ceiling. The sound stopped. The vent cover rattled once, twice, then fell open. Something small dropped out, a room key. I bent down, my hand shaking. It was room 9's key, but newer, shinier, as if it had just been cut. The tag wasn't red anymore. It was blank. I didn't touch it. The TV flickered back on behind me. The screen showed the front desk again, but the perspective had changed. It was looking out from the desk this time, as though the camera were sitting in my chair, I could see the lobby door close tight. Then, on the screen, the door opened. Someone walked in, the man in the gray suit. He turned toward the camera slowly, head tilted like he was listening for something. Then he smiled, and the sound came through again, barely a whisper under the static. "You forgot to leave the door unlocked." The TV shut off. I looked at the front door. It was locked. I hadn't even realized it. Something brushed past the glass from outside, a faint shadow, tall and lean, moving toward the window. The neon sign outside flickered wildly, bathing the lot in bursts of red light. Through the glare, I saw him, the man in the suit, standing motionless just beyond the glass, rain, or maybe seawater, dripping from his shoulders. He raised his hand and tapped the window once. Tap. The sound echoed like a heartbeat. When I blinked, he was gone. But the window stayed wet for hours, streaked with what looked like handprints sliding downward, each finger trailing salt. I didn't unlock the door that night. I couldn't. But when dawn came and I finally opened it, I saw footprints in the parking lot, leading away toward the highway. They weren't heading out, they were coming in. By the fifth night, I'd started keeping the lights off on purpose. Something about the fluorescent glow made the shadows move differently, like they were adjusting themselves when I wasn't looking. In the dark, the motel felt smaller, safer almost, like it was holding its breath. The storm that had been threatening all week finally broke around 11. Rain hammered the roof, sheets of it, turning the parking lot into a blur of silver and reflection. The sound was constant, heavy, relentless, and it almost drowned out the soft hum of the neon sign outside. Almost. I sat at the desk, staring at the guest ledger. Every name looked strange now, each one written in a slightly different hand. Mason in room 2 hadn't returned in 2 days. The old couple from room 5 left their key, but not their car. And the woman in room 8, I realized I hadn't seen her at all since my first night, yet her room light still flickered on after dusk. The rain made the walls sweat. I could smell the damp wood, the faint mold that clung to the carpet. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. The clock read 3:28 a.m. I remembered. Rule #9. At 3:33 a.m., check the guest log. Cross out any name that wasn't there before your shift started. It was the only one I hadn't followed yet. The second hand crawled forward. 3:31. 3:32. The minute flipped, and I opened the ledger. 4 new names were written there, all in ink darker than the rest, the letters trembling slightly, like written by someone whose hand was shaking. Clara Ridgway, Jonas Tull, Dunley, Eli Parker. I stared at my own name, heartbeat stuttering. The pen I kept beside the register rolled off the counter and hit the floor with a soft click. Rain pounded harder. The lights flickered once. I reached for the pen and held it over the page. My name seemed to shift on the paper, like it was breathing. Rule #9 said to cross them out, all of them. I pressed the pen to the page and dragged a line through the first name, Clara Ridgway. The lights above me buzzed and went dark for half a second. From somewhere down the hall, I heard a door open, slowly, like a sigh. I crossed out the second name, Jonas Tull. The rain stopped, just like that. Silence fell so heavy my ears rang. I could hear something wet moving across the lobby floor, like bare feet on tile. I crossed out Dunley. The vending machine let out a metallic groan, the kind it made before dispensing something, I turned toward it. The glass front was fogged over, but I could see movement inside, something long and pale sliding against the glass, pressing from the inside out. The last name sat there waiting, mine. I hesitated. If the pattern held, crossing it out might do more than flicker the lights. The air smelled of salt again. The TV screen glowed faintly, though it was turned off. Then I heard it, someone whispering just beside my ear. "Finish it." I turned, but no one was there. The guest ledger fluttered open wider, pages flipping as if caught in a wind that didn't exist. The lights flickered. The reflection in the front window wasn't mine anymore. It was the man in the gray suit, standing exactly where I stood, watching me. I took a deep breath and drew the final line through my name. The pen snapped in half. Every light in the motel went out at once. The sound that followed wasn't thunder. It was deeper, like something heavy shifting beneath the building, dragging across the earth. For a moment, the dark felt solid, like I could reach out and touch it. Then, one by one, the lights came back on. The lobby looked the same, quiet, empty. But when I looked at the guest ledger, every name on every page, years worth, had been crossed out. Hundreds of them. I don't know how long I sat there. The rain started again, soft and steady this time. I thought maybe the worst was over, until I saw the reflection in the glass door. Someone was standing behind me. I turned slowly. The man in the gray suit stood in the doorway to the hall, pale and still, water dripping from his sleeves. His eyes weren't blue anymore. They were black, endless, filled with motion, like deep water under moonlight. "You shouldn't have done that," he said softly. His voice sounded tired, almost sad. "Now there's no one left to remember." The lights flickered again, and when they steadied, he was gone. But the door to room 9 was open. A faint orange glow spilled down the hallway, pulsing like a heartbeat. I told myself I wasn't going to open that door. I told myself I'd walk out instead, leave the keys on the counter, and drive until I hit another state. But the truth is, I never really believed I could leave. From the moment I saw my name crossed out in the ledger, I think part of me already belonged to the place. The glow from room 9 bled into the hallway, faint and steady, like candlelight seen through water. It pulsed slowly, and with each beat, the air grew heavier, the floor colder beneath my shoes. I could hear something faint behind the door, soft, irregular sounds, not footsteps, not voices, just movement, like breathing filtered through walls. My hand found the key before I even decided to move. I don't remember picking it up, but there it was in my palm, the new one, the blank tag. It was cold, too cold for something made of brass. The metal seemed to hum faintly, and when I turned it between my fingers, it felt almost like it was drawing warmth from my skin. I walked down the hall. The lights overhead flickered in rhythm with my steps. The vending machine, still fogged from whatever had been inside it, buzzed once and then went silent. Everything seemed to lean toward the end of the hall, as if the motel itself was watching me approach. The closer I got, the clearer the smell became, salt water and metal, like wet coins. When I stopped in front of room 9, the knob was warm again, just like the first night. I stood there for a long time, the key sweating in my hand, the glow from underneath the door painting the tips of my shoes orange. The door felt alive. I could hear a low vibration through it, a hum like electricity in a distant wall. I thought about rule #1, Never rent room 9. Then rule #8. Never knock on room 9, even if you hear someone crying. I had already broken one of them, maybe both. I turned the key in the lock. It moved too easily this time, like the tumblers were waiting for me. The latch clicked open with a soft sigh. Inside, the air was warm and still. The light came from a small lamp on the nightstand, the same one I'd seen the first night. But the bulb wasn't what was glowing. It was the water in the ashtray. The same glass dish, filled to the brim with salt water, rippling as though something beneath the surface was breathing. I stepped inside. The room was clean, untouched. The bed was made tight enough to bounce a coin off. The curtains were drawn, but I could still hear the ocean faintly, though I knew it was miles away. Then I noticed the wallpaper. Its pattern of blue waves seemed to move. Not an illusion from the light, not exactly. The ripples rolled upward, like the walls were breathing in. Something moved behind me. I turned, expecting to see the hallway, but the doorway was gone. The wall was solid now, seamless, as though the door had never existed. For a moment, panic hit me hard. I pressed my palm where the door had been. It was warm, almost soft. Then a faint whisper came from somewhere behind me, low and echoing, as if underwater. "You came back." The voice wasn't quite male or female. It was too steady, too calm, as though it had been waiting a long time to speak. I took a step toward the center of the room. The carpet squelched faintly under my shoe. I looked down and saw water seeping up through the fibers, clear and cold. Within seconds, it spread across the floor in a thin film. The ashtray's surface rippled harder, the glow deepening from orange to red. I backed toward the bed, but something was already sitting there. At first, it looked like a shadow cast by the lamp, human-shaped, slouched forward. But then it lifted its head. Its eyes were colorless, its outline trembling, as if it couldn't decide where its edges were. "Who are you?" I managed to say, though my voice barely rose above a whisper. The figure tilted its head, the same way he had, the man in the gray suit. "I'm the one who checks in," it said quietly. "You're the one who stays." The words crawled under my skin. "I don't understand." It smiled then, and in that movement, its face came into focus for half a second. I saw myself. Not exactly. Older, thinner, eyes sunk deep like I hadn't slept in years. My own voice came out of its mouth when it spoke next. "You crossed them all out, Eli. Someone had to take their place." I stumbled backward. My foot hit the nightstand, knocking over the ashtray. The water spilled onto the carpet, but instead of soaking in, it spread outward, faster than it should have, forming a perfect circle around my feet. The air temperature dropped so fast my breath came out in clouds. Every surface in the room began to pulse faintly. The wallpaper, the mirror, even the carpet, as if the motel itself were inhaling and exhaling through its wall. "We keep the ones who remember," the voice said, "the ones who see the names." The water rose an inch, then 2. My reflection looked back at me from the rippling surface, but it wasn't moving with me anymore. It was still, mouth half open, eyes fixed. I turned towards where the door had been and found only that seamless wall again. I slammed my shoulder against it, once, twice. It gave slightly, like pushing into something soft and deep. A smell like brine and old rot filled the air. Behind me, the lamp flickered. I turned again, and the figure, my reflection, or whatever it was standing now. Its mouth was still open, but the sound that came out wasn't words. It was a rush of air, a low oceanic sigh. The walls began to shimmer. The wallpaper's blue pattern bled into real water, droplets forming and trickling downward. The bedspread darkened, soaked through. The figure reached toward me. Its hand passed through the water pooled around my shoes, and when it came out, droplets hung in the air like beads of glass, frozen in place. "You shouldn't have crossed them out," it whispered again. "You erased the exits." I wanted to scream, to move, but the room had turned heavy, like being submerged too deep. My ears popped, my lungs burned. I tried to step backward, but the water held me in place, clutching at my ankles with invisible fingers. Then the mirror over the dresser cracked. Not all at once, but in a slow, deliberate pattern, like something was tracing lines from the inside. Beneath the cracks, another room appeared. Not a reflection this time, but a view, dim and flickering. I saw the lobby, lit by that same blue glow from the TV. Someone was sitting at the front desk, their head down on their folded arms. It was me. I was still at the desk, still sitting there, the pen in my hand, the guest ledger open. The realization hit like cold water in my lungs. I'd never left the lobby. The figure standing in front of me smiled, as if reading the thought. "That's the trick," it said softly. "No one ever leaves. We just trade places." The room shuddered once, a deep rumble that seemed to come from below the floor. Then the lamp went out, plunging everything into red darkness. The only light came from the water itself, now glowing faintly from beneath the surface. Shapes began to move inside it. Faces, maybe, or fragments of them. Eyes opening. Mouths forming words I couldn't hear. Each time one surfaced, it looked a little like me. I screamed then, not out of fear exactly, but because I felt something pulling me down, tugging at my legs. The water had risen to my knees, cold and thick, like standing in syrup. The wallpaper peeled away, revealing concrete underneath, damp and slick with condensation. "It's okay," the voice said. "You belong here now. We all do." I think I blacked out for a moment. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the bed, soaked, the lamp still glowing faintly orange. The floor was dry. The ashtray sat neatly on the nightstand, half full of water again. The door was open. Outside, the hallway was silent. I stood up slowly, my clothes dripping salt. The blank key tag lay on the floor, its metal ring snapped. When I stepped into the hall, the smell of the ocean hit me hard, fresh this time, real. I walked toward the lobby, every light flickering as I passed. The desk was empty, the ledger was open. But on the last page, one name had been written in neat, dark ink: Eli Parker. Not crossed out this time. Underneath, in smaller letters, someone had written, "Manager on duty." I sat down behind the desk and stared at the words until the first light of dawn slipped through the blinds. Somewhere in the walls, water moved quietly, like breathing. The vending machine clicked once. The phone rang. It was exactly 1 a.m. I didn't answer. And outside, through the glass, the neon sign flickered to life, again, Seaside Motor in vacancy. For the first time, I understood what that word really meant. The next morning came slow and gray, the kind of dawn that doesn't really brighten anything, just drains the color out of what's left. The storm had passed, leaving everything slick with salt and silence. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember the ringing of the lobby phone fading into the sound of waves. When I opened my eyes, The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, emptied quiet. Like the air had been scooped out of the world and no one had remembered to put it back. The neon sign outside was still buzzing faintly. The vacancy part blinked in and out, letters dimming one by one like a dying heartbeat. The desk felt different under my hands, cleaner, smoother, like the years of grime had been scrubbed away overnight. The ledger sat open to the last page. My name was still there, written in a neat hand I didn't recognize. The words "manager on duty" glistened faintly, the ink still wet. I touched the paper. It was warm. The door creaked behind me. I turned, expecting to see Dunley, but it wasn't him. A young woman stood in the doorway, maybe mid-20s, jeans, backpack, a cheap gas station coffee in hand. She looked like someone who'd been driving too long. Her eyes had that same lost look I used to carry, like she'd been trying to outrun something that couldn't be seen in a rearview mirror. "Hey," she said, hesitating. "You got a room?" Her voice was small, hopeful. For a second, I didn't know what to say. The words didn't come the way they should have. I looked down at the key rack behind me. 11 hooks. 10 were filled. 1 was missing. Room 9. The red tag had returned, but the letters were new and sharp. "Do not issue." The girl cleared her throat. "Sorry, if you're not open, I can keep driving." "No," I said quickly. My voice sounded wrong, thicker. "We're open." I forced a smile. It felt strange on my face, like my skin didn't quite remember how to stretch that way. "How many nights?" "Just 1, she said. I nodded and slid the ledger toward her. "Sign here." As she reached for the pen, a drop of water fell from the ceiling onto the counter between us. Neither of us said anything. She looked up, frowning at the stained tile. I lied before I could think. "Old pipes." She smiled politely and wrote her name, Tara Blake. Her handwriting looped gently, like someone who'd been careful all her life. When she handed the pen back, I saw something on her wrist. A faint red mark, almost a scar, shaped like a circle. For some reason, it made my stomach turn. I forced myself to look away. "Room 7, I said, taking a key from the hook. She hesitated. "You sure you're all right? You look tired." I wanted to tell her to leave, to keep driving north until she ran out of highway. But the words that came out weren't mine. "Long night," I said. "Storm messed with the power." She nodded, took the key, and walked down the hall. Her footsteps made no sound on the carpet. The lights overhead flickered once as she passed, like something breathing out. When she disappeared around the corner, I exhaled. The lobby clock ticked steadily. 7:04 a.m. I looked down at my hands. The skin around my knuckles was pale, faintly pruned, as if I'd been soaking them in water too long. My nails were grayish, almost translucent. I rubbed them, but the color didn't change. I stood up, moved toward the mirror behind the desk. The reflection looked normal enough, though the light seemed to catch in my eyes strangely. Flat, no shine. I blinked once. The reflection didn't. I turned away. Outside, the rainwater had gathered in puddles across the lot. I could see faint ripples in them, though the air was perfectly still. I walked to the door and opened it. The morning breeze carried that same smell. The gulf, close and endless. Gulls wheeled far above, silent. The whole world felt distant, like it had been turned down just enough for me to hear the motel breathing again. Something tugged at the edge of my memory then, like the sound of a familiar name spoken from another room. A flash. Me, sitting at this desk days ago, crossing out names, watching the lights flicker. Then another image. Standing in room 9, the water rising, voices whispering beneath it. It all felt far away now, as if it had happened to someone else. I closed the door softly and went back to the counter. The ledger sat open where Tara had signed. Below her name, a faint line of ink had begun to appear, slow and deliberate, writing itself letter by letter. It spelled Eli Parker. The pen lay still on the counter, but the writing continued, the nib dragging invisible ink. I reached out and touched the page. The letters stopped. The ink bled into a circle. A droplet of water landed on the paper, then another. When I looked up, the ceiling stain had darkened, spreading wider, dripping steadily now. The sound was rhythmic, like a slow clock. I backed away. The phone rang. It was exactly 1:03 a.m. and again. Except it wasn't night anymore. The sunlight outside hadn't shifted. The shadows hadn't moved. The world just forgot to keep time. I stared at the phone until it stopped ringing. Then I heard it, the sound I'd come to dread most. Footsteps. Not from the hallway this time, from above. They moved slowly across the ceiling, heavy and deliberate. Dust drifted down with each step. The sound passed over the desk, then stopped directly above me. I remembered the rule. If you hear footsteps on the roof, ignore them. But I didn't need to. I already knew what they were. The floor creaked near the doorway. I turned just in time to see Tara standing at the end of the hall. She looked confused, half turning toward me. "Hey, do you have towels? The ones in my room are all wet." Her voice trembled slightly. "Wet?" I asked. "From the rain?" She shook her head. "No, the ceiling was dripping when I came in. The carpet's soaked. It's weird. It smells like salt water." My throat went dry. She frowned at my silence. "You all right?" I wanted to tell her to get in her car and drive. I wanted to tell her not to answer the phone if it rang, not to knock on any doors, but the lights flickered, and she vanished mid-step, like a film reel skipping. When they steadied again, the hallway was empty. The door to room 9 was open. A soft orange glow pulsed from within. I closed my eyes. "No," I whispered. The vending machine clicked once, and the front door lock turned on its own. The wind pushed it open just enough for the sound of the ocean to slide in. Closer now, impossibly close. The phone rang again. I picked it up this time. Static poured through, loud enough to rattle the counter. Beneath it, a faint voice spoke, layered, distant, and wrong. "Manager on duty," it said in my own voice. Then silence. When I looked at the ledger again, Tara's name was gone. Only mine remained. The light outside dimmed, like the sun had set too quickly. I looked through the window and saw the vacancy sign flicker once, twice, then steady itself in a solid, blood-red glow. The reflection in the glass wasn't mine anymore. It was Dunley's face, pale, gray, watching me from the other side, lips moving silently. I didn't try to read what he was saying. I just reached over and turned the closed sign to open. The hum of the building deepened, a long exhale through its vents. Somewhere in the walls, water trickled softly. I sat back down at the desk. The keys rattled faintly on their hooks, and for a moment, I thought I heard laughter from far down the hall. I opened the ledger one last time and wrote 3 words beneath my name. Check-in complete. The clock on the wall reset itself to midnight. Outside, the highway was empty again. No cars, no sound, except the waves. The phone rang once more, and this time I answered it calmly. Seaside Motor Inn, I said. Manager on duty, you looking for a room? A pause. A woman's voice replied, distant and tired. Yeah, just one night. I smiled without meaning to. The sea pressed closer against the walls, whispering through the pipes, the way it always does when it's about to start over. Sure, I said softly. We've got plenty of vacancies. The neon sign outside hummed brighter, casting the world in its trembling red glow. And somewhere far down the coast, another storm began to roll in.